I'm glad you mentioned the idea of beauty as one of the transcendentals that goes along with and it co-inheres with truth and goodness, and how it has a special power, like Solzhenitsyn said, to reach people who have kind of moved past truth and goodness. This is near the heart, the beating heart of Tolkien's whole project. This is what Lewis meant when he said that this is a book that will break your heart. Here, what do you say? Here are beauties that bite like cold steel or something. The Lord of the Rings, as a piece of the overall legend, truly is this heartbreakingly beautiful work, and it has an ability to cut through the spiritual stupor and sneak past those watchful dragons, as the Inklings might have said, in a way that a lot of stuff really doesn't. Do you see, because we're talking, I'm talking to a systematic theologian here, we're talking about a book that views Tolkien through the lens of systematic theology and its categories, but there's something that's not systematic about all of this. There's something that's not propositional, that we're having an encounter with an attribute of God himself in beauty that can't be put into so many words. And in fact, when we try to do that, we're actually doing something other than the beauty, the initial beauty itself. Like, we're now talking about the beauty, so we're removed a step from it. Do you see a challenge there to the way we tend to think, and perhaps a call back to something a little more ineffable, if that makes sense, if that question makes sense?
No, I understand what you're getting at. I'll preface this a little bit. I think systematic theologians are probably some of the best situated people to do this. Because, the Bible is not just a list of propositional statements. The Bible is not a systematic theology. Systematics comes subsequent to Scripture. Attention to what Scripture says. Like, systematic theology is not the native category that God has given us to reveal himself. It's stories, it's poems, it's letters, it's all sorts of things. And systematics comes after that. I think it's Karl Barth that said, we don't attend to theology, we attend to the Bible, and theology comes out of it. So in that sense, the fact that Tolkien didn't write a systematic theology, the fact that that Tolkien Dogmatics is a step back from what Tolkien's actually doing, right? Reading Tolkien Dogmatics does not give you the same experience as reading Beren and Luthien. But it is something that, like, I, as a systematic theologian, am very comfortable with doing, because that's what I do in my other job. But the analysis of texts and I describe it as like there's this big ball of yarn, like everything is interconnected. Everything relies upon everything else. I'm talking both about Scripture and about Middle Earth, and so the project is, if you're going to do it systematically, you have to take something that's all interconnected and then pull it out into a line, and it's very difficult to do. But it is possible because we have a history of theology. Secondarily, the idea of beauty, I want to draw attention to the vocabulary that you were using: heartbreaking, cutting, those sorts of things. There's pain involved in that. And I think that's one of the reasons why The Lord of the Rings is as impactful as it is because, as Tolkien himself explicitly says, most of the beauty comes from the sorrow element and not from the happy element.
Yeah.
And so Tolkien is uniquely positioned to be able to talk about that because he is a poet and a writer who has lived through one of the worst experiences in the history of humanity, right? Like he was in World War I, like he was at the Battle of the Somme. He saw all of this stuff. Like when he talks about war and death, that's not something that he's just sitting in his armchair speculating about. It's something that he had real firsthand knowledge of. You know, his dad died when he was 3. His mom died when he was 13, I think 13. You know, the 2 of the 3 close friends that he ever had as an orphan were killed in the war. Like this is the element of sorrow and death and tragedy is something that Tolkien knows intimately.
I don't know what you thought about the recent biopic, the Tolkien biopic, but there was one really moving moment in there where he's in the trenches and he sees like fire bombs explode, and then it sort of transforms into a Balrog for a second, and then you can almost think you see a Nazgul, and you see the supernatural character of the evil that's the horror that's taking place in front of him.
Yeah, actually, we just watched that again. That's why I showed that to my my intro to philosophy class, because that's one of the we're about to start The Hobbit for quarter 4, so like literally we just watched it yesterday.
Yeah.
No, I think it's great. Like I liked it when I saw it the first time, and then I really liked it when I saw it again. And it really does capture the atmosphere of the time, and of this sort of loneliness that Tolkien would have experienced throughout his life, this longing for something. And Lewis says the same thing, right? He's got that German word that he leaves untranslated of Sehnsucht, which is this longing, this painful longing for beauty. And the idea is that you cannot actually get things to be as beautiful as they are without mixing them in with this element of tragedy. And so I talk about this a little bit in the book, is that's actually, Tolkien is approaching a new form of theodicy here, explaining the problem of pain in this sort of narrative form that he says, when Frodo and Sam are on the stairs of Cirith Ungol, like, they don't want to be there. It's a miserable place to be, and you wouldn't want to be there either. And yet you take pleasure from reading about them being there.
Yeah.
And imagining yourself there. So what's that about?
Yeah.
Anyway, there's a lot more that can be said about that, but I want to draw attention to the idea that the beauty and the sorrow are always connected.